Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a video that's kind of cool and it's a little bit different than what we typically do because as I'm filming this rifle has not yet been announced. However, if you guys follow me on social media, you guys will know that I've been teasing it for a while now. It's part of Brownells' new retro line. Basically, it composes four different rifles. We have this one here, which is a 601 clone. We'll get into what that means in pretty good detail here later on in the video. They also have what's called the transitional model, which is basically between the 601s and then what eventually became the M16A1. Then they have the M16A1 clone, and then they have the XM177 clone. So this one here was largely known as the Air Force model because the majority of the ones that were produced and sold and delivered to the military went to the United States Air Force. So that's the one I selected because I am an Air Force veteran. I'm also an Army veteran. So I could have really kind of went with any of them. But this one here is kind of cool and unique because it has some features that you just don't find on modern day ARs. So we'll get into that here in just a second. I haven't fired a single round through it. So what we're going to do here is get it zeroed and then do some shooting with it today. And sort of along the way, we'll walk you through the features this rifle has that makes it a 601 clone. So let's go shoot it. So these are the first rounds we're going to put through the rifle and just get it on paper here. Target at 25 yards. We're going to dial in the sights here a little bit and then have some more fun at a little bit better or more entertaining distances rather. Let's check them out. As you can see from the target image that we're rolling in, the windage looks good, at least at this distance anyway. And I'm not going to adjust it. We're just going to move the elevation up. But if you have to adjust the windage, the rear sight here is where you're going to do it. So it has the A1 style drum where you have to actually push the little detent in. And they make a specific sight adjustment tool for it. However, any 223 or 5.56 round works just fine to adjust it. I've done it a million times. It does work fine. However, there is, like I said, a fancy tool for it. We are going to move this one up though, so that's going to be done with the front sight. And I should point out at this point that this has the correct front sight for the 601. So current front sights are very different. They're sort of squared off-ish, and they're also a different length. This one here has the correct sort of tapered up circular appearance, and that is exactly how the 601s were there. So kudos to Brownells for getting that one right, as they got a lot of things right here on this rifle. So basically we're going to make the adjustments, finish out the zero, and then at that point you guys are going to see me hopefully ring a little bit of steel at distance. But just to move it up, it's like any other AR-15 height. You're going to turn the sight clockwise, and any old sight adjustment tool will work. The old ones are no different than the new ones, with the exception that they have 5 prongs. So some of the new ones will have 4, these ones will have 5. So most sight adjustment tools though do work on both. So we're gonna crank that thing down, which will raise it up and keep on trucking. We got the rifle zeroed, at least I think we do, and we got a couple of targets downrange. One of them on the left, my left, is at 319 yards, and the one on the right is 517 yards, according to this rangefinder. So I'm fairly confident I'll be able to do some work on that 300, whatever, 19-yard target, 17 rather. But that long one, not sure. Reason I say that is we got some wind today, and I don't have a spotter spotting my impacts. You guys may be able to see the impacts with the camera because I got 2 target cams going on, but I can't see it. I can't see impact at that distance. Definitely not with 223 ammo, so, or 5.56 rather. So we'll give it a whirl and we'll see how it'll do. I mean, you know, 350. That's not really a hard shot with a 20-inch rifle radius that we have here, or rather the 20-inch rifle iron sight radius that we have here. That should be pretty much a chip shot for good shooters out there. So we're gonna step it out and see if I can make any steel ring. Not super confident. We're about to find out. Maybe I will. Who knows? Again, I don't know. I mean, some of those actually might have been hits. I just didn't hear them, so kind of guessing. But one thing is different with the A1s versus you know, the A2 sights and the detachable A4 sights is that you have that elevation dial, which doesn't seem like a lot, which it really isn't. Again, 300 yards and in, somewhere in there, it's really not. Holdovers are pretty easy, but at 500, having the ability to dial that in is nice. So I guess that's probably why they went to it. But we'll go back on that 300 plus yard target and finish the mag out. Well, that's no fun. That was the last round. I'm gonna put a few more on it. And I should mention right now, actually, the rifle ships with this waffle pattern mag. This is, again, period correct for the rifle. These were only out for a very limited time, and they're relatively collectible these days, the original ones. Now, Brownells is reproducing them with all modern components, which is nice. Has the Brownells stamp there on the bottom, but it has that really cool retro look. Another thing about it that's really cool is that they're selling these individually as well, is that it doesn't have the same price as the collectible ones. So it's much more affordable for most folks out there. So, of course, the 20 round mags also work well and would be period correct because, you know, they're in the 60s and 70s. These things were coming with both, and different units for picking stuff up. They had different equipment, so either one would be good. And even later on in the Vietnam War, the 30 rounders started to make an appearance, but we're just shooting 20s today just because it looks cool. So anyway, back on that target. Now we're going to see what kind of accuracy we can get out of this rifle, and the big factor here, the big variable rather, is this guy, probably not the rifle. So we got everything rested down, CTK precision rest, and the iron sights here. Target is downrange at 100 yards. It's a Geissele target, and those little red squares there on the outside, those are an inch, and they're really hard to see from here. I have 20/20 vision in my right eye, 20/10 in my left. So really good vision, and even for me, that's tough to pick out. So I kind of filled in the ones in between to kind of give me a reference point. And I can see them pretty well. Wind is picking up here, as you guys can probably hear. But we're gonna get the test done anyway. So a few different loads, different weights, and we'll see how she likes them. So first up, we have some Winchester. This is their match 69 grain with the Match King bullet. And we'll see what this sucker does here. I should also note that while we're talking about this and doing this, the barrel on this one is the 1 in 12 twist barrel. So some of the earlier 601 barrels were actually a 1 in 14 twist with, I believe, four lands and grooves. This one here has 6 lands and grooves and is 1 in 12 twist. Reason for that is initially they went with the 1 in 14, so that way, obviously, it would tumble well upon impact, the bullet would. But what they found is that at some distances it wasn't stabilizing well, and also in like Arctic conditions, the bullets weren't stabilizing well. So they switched over to the 1 in 12 and then to the M93. which became the correct, or the adopted caliber for it here, I believe in 1963. So we'll test that and see how it does as well. But both 1 in 12 and 1 in 14 twist barrels did exist on this rifle, the actual 601. So we'll see how it likes the heavier loads. I don't think it'll be a problem, but who knows? You never know. 1 in 12 is a pretty abnormal twist rate these days with modern bullets. So we'll see how she does. That is small, guys. If those groups don't look good, yeah, it's probably me and my vision. Just having a hard time getting the same point of aim each time. Anyway, next up we have the M193 ball. This is from Federal, so regular M193 mil spec stuff. And I picked this up over at Freedom Munitions. If you guys don't know, you guys can get a 5% discount with my code over there. That goes for anything, so not just their stuff, but like Federal M193, which we picked up from them. So we will see how this one does. Now, I guess we'll address another point about the 601s and the history behind it. I don't want to make this a history video. This could be a 2-hour long video, but when this gun was first brought into service, basically they didn't use the IMI powder that it was designed for. They used a different powder. And that powder, along with the lack of a chrome line bore, and a lack of cleaning supplies, and soldiers being not trained well on how to clean the rifle, and the fact that it was sold as a self-cleaning rifle, all those things kind of added up to some issues early in Vietnam. And unfortunately, a few soldiers and airmen lost their lives probably because of that. And it's sad, but lessons were learned, and they used the correct powder, you know, obviously after a congressional investigation. And then they also chrome lined the bores, and they retroactively did that on most of the 601s that went out without them. They actually got them back in, chrome lined them, and put them out. Now this particular rifle here has the chrome lining in there, so it's correct in that regard. So we'll see how she likes the 193, at least again with me behind it. Who knows? As you guys can see though, the bolt did lock back. That is normal for those that are unfamiliar with the early 601s. It has a bolt hold open feature, it just doesn't have the forward assist. So next up, we're gonna run another light load through it. This will be the Browning BVX varmint round. So it's a 50 grain 223 load. And we'll see how it does. Obviously you guys can see it also works with modern mags, not just USGI type mags. So works the same regardless. We'll see how this one does. Again, another light load. If those groups look like they shifted a little bit, that's because I changed my point of aim. I'm just having a hard time picking up those outside squares. So anyway, next load up is going to be some 73 grain Federal Premium Burger. So this is their gold medal burger. So it's a heavy for caliber round, even by today's standards. So in this barrel, we'll see how it does. It certainly wasn't designed to shoot and stabilize these types of heavier barrels, but the burger rounds are nice. They have a good BC. They're great for long range shooting. So anyway, we'll see how she likes this one. Well, let's go see how I did. You guys with the aid of the target cam already knew how I did, but I'm really happy with these results. For me as a shooter, not being embarrassed. So first off, we started up here with the 69 grain rounds there. I believe those were the Winchesters. and we're right at 2.5 inches on that group. Then we came over here to the M193, which again would be the correct round for this this rifle, 55 grainer, and that's a good group, guys. For 193, which is not target match, anything like that ammo, I would take that out of a modern barrel, especially with iron sights. We're right at 2 inches on that group. So again, with this guy behind the trigger, I will take that. Now, one thing I want to point out that is an absolute advantage to the A1 rifles versus today's iron sights, and I don't know why more companies don't do this, but that front sight, the nice like sort of rounded slope on there, is way more, in my opinion, way more precise than the standard like 4-sided front sights that we have today. So I do think that absolutely helps in terms of picking up that correct point of aim, or that consistent point of aim. So basically on these ones here, I was trying to shoot on the corners of the targets. So that was sort of my hold. But like I said, I was having a hard time doing it. So what I did is I moved over and kind of held on the corner of the inner square there. So that was the Browning load, I do believe. And on that one, we're right at 2 inches as well. So shooting that one good. Then, interesting results here with the burger, huh? I'm sure you guys are already commenting down below. But what it looks like to me, what it looks like, I would have to review the footage, is that we're absolutely having some keyholing there. So I can see 4. I don't know if there's actually 5 impacts on there with keyholing. 1 could have went off the target. So what that, for those that are new to shooting, what that's actually happening, or the reason that's happening, is because the bullet's not being stabilized correctly with the twist rate. So while it shot the 69 grainers up here just fine, those holes don't look problematic at all. Those 73 grainers, doesn't like them at all. And what's actually happening is because of the spin rate, those bullets are designed to be stabilized. That particular one, 73, probably optimized with 1 in 7, 1 in 8. And out of that 1 in 12, it's just not stabilizing them correctly, particularly in that 20-inch barrel as well. So we're having keyholing, so the group doesn't even matter at that point. But now we know it'll handle some 69 grain loads, but looks like that might be the outer edge of it. So either way, get back to shooting. We did a bunch of shooting with the rifle today, and we are about to lose the sun. So I want to get this final part finished up here so I can edit this and then have this video ready to go when these go live on the 23rd. So that's like about 30 hours from right now. So just trying to get it all in here real quick. So some of the distinct things here about the 601, of course, we have the duckbill flash hider. And that one was, of course, the first one that came out, a 3-prong. I'm a huge fan of 3-prong flash hider to this day. They're extremely effective. The 602s and then eventually the M16A1s, of course, went with a 3-prong following this. However, it wasn't the duckbill. It was a little bit more rigid. And then eventually they went out with the birdcage flash hider, and there's lots of reasons people say for that. Number one, people are saying that in the jungles of Vietnam, these prongs were getting caught in the vegetation. That's certainly possible. A lot of people also say, though, that the 3 prongs were being used to pry stuff open, so they closed the end of the birdcage so soldiers couldn't do that. There's probably some truth in that as well. So moving back there, the barrel, like we talked about, 1 in 12 twists, chrome lined. This one here is a what we would call today a pencil barrel profile, so it's super lightweight. This rifle here weighs right around 6 pounds, so for a 20-inch rifle, that's awesome. Super light, super handy, and of course you get really good velocities out of the 20-inch barrel. Of note, those 1 in 14 twist barrels, like I was mentioning earlier, some of those had a smaller diameter underneath the front sight block, the Winchester ones, but the Colts never did, so that's sort of another way to sort of differentiate which one you have if there's no markings on it. So continuing on back, we have these green handguards here. They are, they do have heat shields, but the original ones were a bakelite material, and then they were painted green. So a lot of times, if you actually look at old war photos of it, it almost looks like it's speckled, and that's because the paint's coming off. Some 601s went out with black handguards, and some were actually painted black as well. So you'll kind of see them with all of the shades there, if you will, out there in the field. Now, continuing to move back, our retainer here is not like what you would see today on like an M4 rifle or an M16A4. This one's straight. It doesn't have the standard taper to it. Again, that's correct for the 601. And then we got some cool stuff going on here with the lower receiver. So should be clear. We are clear. The lower receiver on the 601s doesn't have any fencing. So when I refer to fencing, what I mean is sort of a built-up part in the lower receiver. It's almost like a reinforcement. There's two types of fencing that came after this. The one here that kind of runs along where this little plus symbol is here on this receiver, and again, the 601s had that plus symbol as well. But what that did was allow for a retainer pin. So the front pin on a 601 and on this rifle is not captive, which we'll show you here in a second. And the second type of fencing came around the magazine release. So the true 601s didn't have anything there, and that of course is to prevent soldiers from inadvertently bumping it. But there's no protection on the 601. So both the upper and lower on this rifle are made out of 7075 T6 aluminum. So mil spec in terms of that. It's got a GI type trigger, which again would be correct. We have A1 dimension and colored as well. A1 pistol grip there, which I certainly prefer. I have no idea why they ever went to that little hump in there. But back here in the rear, nothing too fancy. It's a traditional A1 lower. On the left side, we have the Brownells markings, of course, safe and fire. You guys can see that the actual real 601s had the Colt and the Armalite markings on there. So that's kind of a unique thing there to see both of those. Now, we talked about the rear sight on there. Again, some of them did have the adjustments built onto the little drum there. Others didn't. And the charging handle on this rifle is unique in that it has the little triangle shape to it. Now I'll tell you, for practical use, it's terrible. I would much rather have a 90-degree angle like the traditional charging handle that we know today has. From a function standpoint, it's just simply better in that regard. But this one here is cool, and a lot of AR-10s that went out to other countries that Stoner designed use this charging handle for years and years after, at least this design anyway. So there are no markings on the right side of the receiver where the safety is. Again, that would be correct. And the stock here is A1 length, which I personally prefer. It's probably my favorite all-around length. It's a little bit shorter than what you're going to get on the A2. And for me, particularly when you're not shooting from the prone, it's much more comfortable. And then we have our little plastic end plate there. And you'll see that there isn't any spot for a cleaning kit. Again, they didn't come with cleaning kits originally. So that was something that happened later on down the road. And then we have the sling swivel on the bottom as well. We moved in closer for a better shot at that receiver that I'm going to show you here in a second. So we'll pull that out, and then our front pin again is not captive. Push that across, and it has the correct detent in it that you'll see here in a second. So there's that little hollowed out edge there, and when you pull that off, you can separate your upper and lower. You guys can take a look there. Nothing too fancy there on the inside. Everything's pretty correct in that regard. Our bolt release is, again, appropriate for the 601. And what you'll see there, again, the pin comes right out, so you can see why the Army probably wasn't too keen on that, as well as the Air Force, and they went to switch it out. Now, this bolt carrier group here is nice and dirty, but what you'll see is that there are no forward serration marks to bump it home. So some later M16A1s and then the intermediate models there went out with bolt carrier groups that had forward serrations in it, even when the uppers didn't. So it didn't make a lot of sense, but it happened, and they are out there, and you'll see them with that. Again, the chrome finish there on the carrier, full auto profile as you would expect. Good staking. I believe the bolt there is 158 Carpenter steel, as it would have been back then. It's MP and HP tested. And all in all, it's still a good bolt carrier group to this day, so it's doing well there. And then you'll see our, again, charging handle, and you'll note when you look inside the receiver, there are no M4 feed ramps, again, because there wasn't M4 feed ramps on the 601. So we'll throw this one back together here and finish it out. In terms of reliability, the rifle's been flawless. It's eaten everything we fed it, of course. As you guys saw, it doesn't stabilize those heavy bullets too well. But otherwise, there's absolutely nothing to complain about. Reliability's been great. The recoil impulse on the 20-inch rifles is awesome. Nice, soft shooters. Don't need a brake for it or anything like that. Just that long rifle length gas system. And the rifle length buffer there definitely smooths everything out there. Very easy rifle to shoot well. And all in all, it's just been a solid performer. Now, I'm sure one thing you guys want to know is price point. So these are over at Brownells at for $1,299, and that would be, I believe, all of the 5.56 rifles in the retro line are going to be like that. So I believe the XM77, or rather 177, the transitional model, and then also the M16A1 variant are all going to be priced the same. Specs are going to be pretty similar across the board. There's some, of course, intricacies that go with all the different rifles there, but all in all, I'm a fan of it. You guys know I like 20-inch AR-15s. There's no secret. And something like this that has sort of some historical basis for it. It's certainly not a historical rifle in that it's a clone rifle, but there's a lot that went into it, a lot of thought that went into this as well. And while I think $1,300 for a lot of people is relatively expensive for a rifle, no doubt, if you look at what, let's say, Colt's offering with their little retro line that they came out with last year, I think that one's like $2,600. So, and this one here actually has a chrome line barrel, unlike that one. So, compared to some of the other offerings out there, I'd say it's a pretty good price point, and it's not for everybody. It's for the guys who are collectors, the guys who maybe were over in Vietnam or served in the military in the 80s and 90s when these were still prevalent, and just want something that reminds them of their service gun or a service gun of their father or something like that. So definitely a cool gun. If you guys have any questions about it, by all means, you can post down below in the comments section. You can also post over at my Facebook page. As always, that's generally speaking the best way to get in touch with me these days. And if you guys aren't subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope to see all of you in the next video.